Thank y'all so much for having us again. Each year we come to this, it always turns out to be one of the best things that we do throughout the year, just because it's such an intimate event and everybody's really dialed into what's being presented and what you take away from it. So we really appreciate the opportunity to come and support such a great organization like Doug talked about. You know, during COVID, when there was so much uncertainty, it was a great way to connect with everybody when we couldn't all get together. And so, you know, most of you know that our organization provides a lot of funding for personal injury cases, but what I hope to talk about today is we're going to hit on the funding, but there's been, in a lot of different states, a lot of tort reform that has been aimed at the kind of funding that takes place. So whether it's my company or anybody else that you might have a relationship with, there are some things that, you know, have gone on over the last 1 to 2 years in various states that I think really differentiates our company and how we're committed to the cases that we're involved in. And so I'm hoping that the takeaway for you today is some of those differentiating factors when it comes to not just the funding part of the business, but also what happens when you get deep into litigation on some of these big catastrophic cases that you all tend to get. So, you know, as most of you know, HMR we're a national organization. We fund right now in, I think, right at 39, 40 states. I think we're working with about 1,000 providers across the country and obviously hundreds of law firms. You know, I tell people all the time, not every case is right for what we do. Not every firm needs what we do. And so it's never a hard sell. But we want you to know that we've got presence, and you're going to have somebody who's going to be boots on the ground, who's going to actually be able to work with you, develop a relationship with you, and if something is actually needed, you've got a hands-on person there. You know, when we started our company about a decade ago, and I'm proud of that because there's a lot of companies that come into this space and have money, but they don't know how to deploy it in a smart way. And so the fact that we've got a decade in this industry means a lot to us, gives us some staying power and some credibility that I don't think you get from others. But when we started, it was all about medical funding, okay? So the prototypical case for us would be the injured plaintiff who needs some type of medical treatment, but they don't have health insurance, or they're underinsured and they can't get the medical treatment they need while the case is still in litigation. So our company would come in and we would ultimately be able to get someone who needed that care access to that care, whether it was a traumatic brain injury patient who needed an inpatient facility for post-acute rehab, or somebody who was an amputee and needed prosthetics but didn't have the insurance to get what they needed and they had a substandard product. Those were the kinds of cases that we built our company on, and it's really kind of the lifeblood of what we do today. In doing that, we really saw a segue with attorneys who were saying, you funded this catastrophic case for me, but I also need a Dr. Chris Parker who's gonna really come and be a great expert for my case, or I need an accident reconstructionist, or I need $100,000 to bring 8 experts to trial. And so kind of the light bulb went off and we were like, if we're gonna invest in the medical side of the case, why wouldn't we invest in the litigation funding side of the business? And so we started to really see an uptick in that part of the business, and they're not exclusive. You know, I have people who, hey, they've got the medical covered because somebody has insurance or they have a payer who can get them the treatment, and so all they need us for is the litigation funding side of it. And I think being a company that does that on a single case basis, and we're not making attorneys pledge an entire portfolio of cases, is really a differentiating factor for us. And obviously the third part of it, which it kind of runs hand in hand, is you get somebody who's catastrophically injured, they no longer can take care of their family. They gotta have a way to support their families, their lifestyles, be able to continue to do things. And so in a lot of different states, you can't just give money to your clients directly. And so we've then taken on the pre-settlement funding side of the business, which I'll talk about as we get a little further into this. Obviously traumatic brain injury cases over the last 6 years has been, a huge focus of our organization, because we were one of the few that I knew of that we weren't just focusing on the diagnosis and does this person have a brain injury. That is a huge part of it. But and I'll never forget this conversation. I was talking to Randy Rosick in Wisconsin, and he said, I'm putting up these $20, $30 million life care plans for a brain injury case, and inevitably I get smacked in the face with somebody going, okay, well what treatment have they had to support this life care plan you've got? And so we really got into the post-acute space and funding the inpatient therapies and the outpatient rehabs, depending on the severity of what somebody had going on. And so being one of the few companies that not only had access to all of those types of centers, but also had the resources, because if you've had those cases, you understand they are not cheap. It really put our company kind of on the map. I think most people are engaging us when their client keeps coming back and a loved one goes, hey, something's not right, and they're trying to figure out that next step. And for some of you, you've got, plenty of resources, but us having a national presence, you might have a practice in Georgia, but your plaintiff lives in Texas, and you don't really know where to go. And that's where we're gonna come in and really kind of connect the dots. As I mentioned, catastrophic injuries, I know we're talking a lot about brain injury right now. The case I'm actually gonna do a case study on is an amputation case. So amputations, spinal cord injuries obviously is a huge thing, but we fund all types of conservative treatment too. It just kind of depends on what you need. Like I said, not every case is a fit. You might not need me to fund an epidural steroid injection or an MRI, So you have to kind of pick and choose where you think we're a fit. I talk about this because speed and efficiency is always kind of at the forefront of what any attorney, comes to us and asks. They say, okay, my client needs help, but if I go ahead and get you all involved, how quickly can I get the turnaround and we can start funding this case? And so what we've done over the last 18 months at our organization is really invest in the technology and a platform to where we can make it as easy and as efficient for you guys to get us involved. And so, we're going to have you come to our portal. It's going to be specific for your law firm. You can upload documents to us that we need to see so we can underwrite an opportunity. And obviously, as we are funding a case, you can see all of the bills and the records and everything that's housed within it. I touched on in the beginning, tort reform is a big deal. This Guzman ruling that's right there, and we can get anybody who wants to see it a copy of this. This is a Texas appellate case. Texas is a state where it's paid versus incurred, okay? Can only board what was paid, not what the patient incurred. And so this is a case we were directly involved in, where we worked with plaintiff's counsel. We had our attorneys work with plaintiff's counsel to argue this, and at the end of the day, it was something where they were able to get the full amount of the medicals admitted, and they recovered accordingly. And in a place like Texas, that's a huge deal. And what I'm proud of with our organization is we've kind of been doing that in various states around the country now. You know, like I told you, the longevity piece for us is a really important piece. If you've got relationships with other people, I think it's you know, hey, how long have you been in this business? What types of cases are you funding? You know, depending on those answers, it matters who you partner with, because money is a very vulnerable topic to talk about, but it is a necessary part of everything that you guys are doing. So this is the amputation case that I was telling you about. So we recently, actually, from this seminar last year, we had an opportunity to work with a law firm where they had a client who was in Illinois working, was pulled over off to the side of the road, car was disabled, box truck comes up on him, hits him, he loses both legs, okay? He lives in Mobile, Alabama, lawyers in Georgia. And so through something like this, we were able to not only take the case in, but we were able to take somebody who was in Mobile, Alabama, and get them not only the care, but exceptional care in the way of somebody who was now going to be able to get top of the line prosthetics. Obviously, look, the stars aligned, the case could hold it. But it's one of those things where, you know, if we're not involved, that guy doesn't get the care. Those are the words of the law firm that we were working with. I know maybe it's easy to take on an amputation case, but the point that the lawyer drove home to me was, it's nice to have a resource where I know that no matter where I take a case, I'm gonna have somebody who can get me access to the care that's needed. So, you know, in this particular case, you know, it's kind of prototypical, but this case, you know, from a prosthetics piece, this guy could not get the prosthetic he needed. He ultimately started to regress. He fell short. He was really starting to have some problems with the actual stump. And so by the time we got the case, the provider that got involved actually got on a plane, flew to him, actually evaluated him, and then developed a course of treatment for him, and then ultimately started to provide the things that he needed. And at the end of the day, was able to also develop what's the long-term life care plan for somebody like this, and talked about the fact that, hey, it's not just this leg, he's gonna need something for when he's in the shower. He was an athlete, he needs an athletic prosthetic. I mean, he developed the whole plan for you guys, and I mean, it was dynamic. When it comes to the case types, you know, obviously motor vehicle accidents make up a huge part of it, but you know, everything from premise cases to denied workers' comp, to products liability, to medical malpractice cases, depending on the way the laws are structured in a particular area, are all things that we look at. We do get into some mass torts. It's just, it depends on where those cases are from a timing standpoint. Like I said, the tort reform piece is a big piece. There's a lot of people here who are in Florida, right? They just passed a pretty aggressive piece of tort reform there. I'm personally in Louisiana, and they just passed tort reform there that basically says, hey, it's paid versus incurred, and you can only admit what was paid. Texas has it, California has its own version of it, Oklahoma has it. These cases right here and again, we'll get these to you if you want them, are things that when we're taking on a new case, attorneys are asking us, hey, how are you going to tackle this issue? And so through the cases that we've worked, the attorneys who have really evaluated our businesses and taken a deep dive have kind of determined the following, right? Most paid versus incurred law, as you read it, usually talks about payments made on behalf of the plaintiff are subject to be reduced to what was paid. An important distinction that I want you all to take away for what we do is we don't make payments on behalf of the plaintiff. We are purchasing a receivable, okay? This is no different than any other kind of commercial transaction. In these cases that are cited here, that's exactly what they ordered. And so the Walter George case is a Louisiana Supreme Court case that actually just got ruled on in December. And that was the crux of it, It's not payments made on behalf of the plaintiff. And so if you're in these states where there is paid versus incurred statutes, you're having a tough time getting these things in, and you want to utilize a company like mine or anybody else. Depending how their paperwork is written, that is an extremely important distinction that has propelled HMR in the cases we've been involved in a lot of states that have these kinds of tort reform. And I don't think it's going to end. I think it's going to continue to be a battle. They're always trying to find a way to limit you, to try to get around having to compensate the injured party for what's due. And you're certainly seeing it in a place like Florida. I think that's probably the tip of the iceberg in that state. But again, you look at a place like Florida, and while some things are limited there, from a letter of protection standpoint, the case cost and actually being able to provide litigation funding still remains a viable option. The case cost funding, the biggest question that I get is, hey, I've already paid $100,000 to various experts. Can you reimburse me my costs? Today, that's not how my program works, okay? I can't reimburse you your cost. Maybe sometime in the future, as we tweak our organization, that might be a possibility. But the way that we do it today is, if you've got experts that you're going to need for trial purposes or mediation purposes or developing your case, attorneys are getting us involved usually in that 90-day window before you start to gear up for trial. And they're submitting to us the retainer agreements or the invoices directly that need to be paid. So we're paying all of these experts and consultants and vendors directly. So you simply need to submit the invoice to us and we will pay those vendors directly. And again, we do it on a case-by-case basis. So that's, again, something that's a little bit different about how we run our organization. Most people want to know, hey, how do you make money? It's usually the biggest question I get. So at our core, we're a factoring company, okay? It's the model that I just explained to you. We're purchasing a receivable, okay? Just like an insurance company would, but you're able to put forward the full amounts that your client has incurred. And so ultimately, our margin is in that spread, right? And that's usually what somebody tries to argue. Hey, they paid a discount, how do you get that in? And that's what we're talking about navigating. On the case cost part of it, most experts, like a Chris Parker, they got a $20,000 fee, they're not discounting, they want to be paid $20,000. And so we are charging interest on that. Our interest is 3.95%. And again, I know that seems like it's steep, but most people are coming to us 90 days outside of a trial window. So it's not like these expenses run on and on and on. And for those of you who try cases, once you get in that window, the money really, really starts to go out the door and it gets expensive real quick. So again, it might not be for every case, but maybe you do have something in your inventory that actually requires what we're offering. Again, there's probably 50 things that have been left off of this, but these are just a couple that we are paying for right now. If you kind of bring it to me as a trial cost, the likelihood is we're going to be able to fund it. The pre-settlement funding is kind of a slippery slope, right? I actually, when we started this company, we didn't do it because most attorneys I talked to were like, you're a loan shark, or they're loan shark companies, or they turn your cases upside down, it makes it impossible to settle. But then I had the case where a guy was catastrophically injured and his client went to him and said, look, I'm gonna be out of work for the next 2 months. I need, a couple $1,000s to live. And the attorney said, look, I'm your attorney, I'm not your bank. And he fired the attorney. And I was left holding the lien. Now, it all worked out, but in that moment, I at least wanted to be able to provide a resource, okay? And there are companies out there that charge, 8 and 10, 12% a month. Ours is 2.95% a month. Again, if you've got a line of credit or you've got some sort of banking relationship, you should do that. But this gives you a conservative option should that arise in the catastrophic cases where somebody needs money to live on. I've got, a bunch of them right now where it's, hey, my guy's gonna be out for the next year. He needs $2,000 a month for the next year. We will administer that money on a monthly basis. That way you're not having to think about it, it's keeping the client happy, and it's just a matter of running those cases accordingly. Again, I talked to you about what it is. Again, these pre-settlement fundings and case cost fundings, they come, think about an amortization schedule like you get with your mortgage. I'm gonna show that to you up front, okay? So you can see it, you can show it to your client, so they know up front, this is what it is. I just don't want anybody to be surprised at the end of the day. Again, this just gives you an example of kind of what it looks like. Again, if you have a better way to fund it, by all means, it's not a hard sell. But again, we continue to give you resources in all aspects of what you do, whether it's medical funding, litigation funding, or pre-settlement funding. It is a complete vertical integration into the law firm for everything you need on a funding basis. Again, kind of illustrates, all the different branches, and I just, again, want to point out, none of these things are exclusive, okay? You can use any of these as you see fit, and people do it all the time. Again, some of the best things that we've done have been laid out with some of the people that we've met right here at this conference. It's been a great thing to be a part of. And what we try to do at the end of anything that we're working on is, I know that everybody gears up for trial like we're going to try every case. But the truth is a lot of cases that we're involved with on the funding side, they end up settling at some sort of mediation or at the courthouse steps. And inevitably I get the calls about, hey, can you work with us at the end of the case because this, and this happened. And the thing is that we are that company. We are that company that is going to work with you. We're going to try to be as flexible as possible, because what I don't want is I don't want to work with you just once. I want a relationship with people. And so if I make it that difficult for you to use me to resolve a case at the end, it's going to be the last time we do business together. And so I pride myself on the fact that we make smart investments on the cases that we get involved with, but we also understand that things happen. And that is a two-way street. And it has to come with some compromise on our end, and obviously you guys. If we can answer any questions for you, like I said, we've got a couple of different representatives here. You can get with Taylor or Ted or Danielle. But again, this continues to be an organization where the support from the people who participate is just tremendous. I can't say enough good things about Ginger and John and the people who really make all this happen. And we hope that we'll get to continue to support you guys as you continue to come out and show up for things like this. So thank you for your time. If y'all need anything or have any questions, just let us know.